Are you thinking 2025 is the year that you want to buy a farm in West Virginia? Let's talk about the numbers. Let's talk about a little bit of data and see what your options might be. My name is Garrett Cole. I'm the broker of Lakewood Real Estate Service, and I appreciate you checking out this video. And let's talk farming in West Virginia. A little bit about the lay of the land in West Virginia. Of course, you do have a lot of topography variety when it comes to the mountains and the valleys. And so, this is not going to be flat land farming like the crops out in the Midwest or even in the South. However, if you can work with the hillsides with the livestock or crops that you want to grow, you have options and you can make yourself a nice property that's a secluded mountain getaway surrounded by your own farm. One thing about farming is always the rule of thumb in all of real estate: location, location, location. And yes, it's still a thing even when it comes to farming, because really, how close are you to the nearest town? Can you get there with or without a four-wheel drive pickup truck? And, where are the grocery stores, hospitals, and schools if you have school-age children? The ups and downs of farming in West Virginia. Literally, flat land is like gold in West Virginia. It is often more valuable because there's not a plethora of flat land in West Virginia. Steep slopes might be a opportunity to have killer views for your farm and your home to be built on, but you might be surrounded by a little bit of hillside that you've got to figure out what kind of crops and livestock you might have on that property. One other part of farming in West Virginia is access to water. Not every road, not every community has public water. And so you do need to check and see, is there the opportunity for cisterns, for wells, or also another thing to consider, is it in a floodplain? Because you might find a very nice wide valley field on a piece of property that you could farm and raise crops on. But if it's going to flood all the time, that's a factor to keep in mind too. And of course, West Virginia is known for its coal. And so one other thing that really matters in farming is what lies underneath and who owns it. Not always do the properties get sold in fee, where they own the surface and mineral rights. More often than not, large or small tracts, you'll run into a situation where you only buy the surface rights, not the mineral rights to a piece of property. And so is there potential mining or drilling going on nearby? Natural gas is a lot more common in the north central counties of the state. But of course, in central and southern West Virginia, there's a lot of coal mining, both surface and underground, which you'd have to check and make sure you don't have any issues with runoff or any kind of subsidence on your property. You also have to know the rules of the game. A lot of counties in West Virginia do not have zoning, but for the ones that do, you need to check the current zoning regulations of what you can and can't do specifically to the property that you have. Usually counties have zones or specific zoning classifications that are specifically to the parcel of property itself, and you might need to check and make sure you can do the kind of farming that you're looking to do. You also should be aware of any kind of future developments in the area. Of course, you probably wouldn't want to build a 100-acre cow farm and then have a sewer plant on one side of you and a condominium built on the other side of you. So, it's definitely worth checking into what kind of plans are for the local area and the kind of neighbors you will have in the long run. One other thing is you should be aware of environmental regulations specific to the property or the area to make sure if there is any kind of limitations of the land that you're looking to purchase, to make sure you're not going to have any issues from government or local regulation to use your property as you're thinking about using it with agriculture. One thing about raw land and agricultural land is it can be hard sometimes to try and pin down the true value of property, usually per acre in a state like West Virginia, with up and down economic turns. And of course, the vitality of the property itself, whether it's flat, hillside, a mixture, or valley property. Selling land in West Virginia isn't really for those who are a little bit impatient, because sometimes it takes time to find the right buyer. Even when you have beautiful river views from a canyon rim property or something like that, even sometimes it takes a little bit of time, and it's really good to go into selling a piece of property like this with the right expectations in mind, knowing that it takes a little bit longer than you might be anticipating. One thing about buying farmland in West Virginia is a good idea to, of course, a little bit of bias here, but we'll stand by it, is talk to real estate professionals like the professionals here at Lakewood Real Estate Service. They can specialize and tell you what the land can offer, give you some ideas of regulatory matters that might affect the property, and of course try and help you come up with a fair price to list or a fair offer to try and buy a piece of property. Another good idea is to check with local planning development councils and organizations who should be able to fill you in on local possible infrastructure improvements, planning development, and stuff like that surrounding the piece of property you might be looking at to know really what's coming down the road, because that is something that they specialize in every single day. One thing to keep in mind about West Virginia agricultural land is this is not a one-size-fit-all approach here. You might have 100 acres of forest property, you might have 20 acres of valley flat land, and you might have a family farm that's 180 acres of rolling pastures. And all of these different variations can be side by side in West Virginia. And it's good to really do your due diligence and have a real estate professional help you in figuring out the usability of the property, what you can do with the property, and of course, what kind of neighbors the property has and what kind of developments might affect it down the road. The best way to go about buying agricultural land in West Virginia is to go into it with your eyes wide open and your homework ready to be done. The West Virginia land market can be difficult at times, but for those who do their due diligence, work through the process, and eventually find a piece of property that works for them, it can be very rewarding to be a small or large-scale farmer in the state of West Virginia. According to recent USDA data, farm real estate values in West Virginia jumped 8.6% from 2022 to 2023 at an average of about $3,250 an acre. Since 2023, it's raised even more to probably about an average of $5,000 an acre, but really close to a 4-lane highway. I know of a property that just sold for $9,243 an acre. And so there's a lot of variety. Again, it goes back to location and a number of these different factors that we've talked about. But that's what we're here to do for you, to pull all that data, let you know what you're getting yourself into, what kind of property you're considering, and see if it might be the one. And so thank you for watching this video. If you're thinking 25 is the year to buy farmland in West Virginia, we'd love to talk and hope to hear from you soon. Thank you for watching this video.